Hey guys, welcome back to The Bright Side. Macy here, The Bright Side Girl, and today we're doing my August audiobook wrap-up. If you missed it, I posted my August reading wrap-up yesterday. I'll link that up here in the cards for you, so go and check it out. They're all the books that I physically read for the month of August. I only read 3, but there were some really great ones and some ones that I didn't like so much, so check that out. And for now, we're going to talk about the 1.5 million audiobooks I read for August. First up, I read This Shattered World by Aimee Kauffman and Megan Spooner. This one is narrated by Colin Harris and Donabella Mortel. They'll be linked right here. This is book 2 in the Starbound trilogy. Aren't they so beautiful? I've wanted to read these for a long time. I read book 1 I think in June, and I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. Aimee Kauffman is the co-author of Illuminae Files and Aurora Rising with Jay Kristoff, and then Megan Spooner has some solo books out, Hunted and Sherwood, that I really loved. So I was really excited to jump into their trilogy, and I gave the first book 4 stars. So this book, much like Illuminae, is following new set of characters in the same world with like the same overall issue happening, and they kind of interconnect with the characters from the first world at some point. I didn't love this one, unfortunately. I don't know if it was just the narrators that I didn't like or what was happening. I was really bored and kind of waiting for it to be over. For me personally, I love a good sci-fi like adventure story, but I felt like this was very somber and like the romance wasn't that good, and I just kind of missed Jay Kristoff, to be honest. I wanted a little bit of humor or a little bit more romance. This was more like a 3-star, and I gave the first one I think 4 stars, so not terrible. I just felt kind of bored and I kind of wanted it to be done, and I'm kind of dreading reading the next one. I am going to, because I just want to see if I like it as a whole, because I really want to keep them because they're so pretty. But if I wind up not liking the next one, I'll probably unhaul this trilogy, unfortunately. Next, I'm going to put a picture of Fangirl right here because I don't want to go grab it out of my bedroom. But I reread Fangirl. This is narrated by Rebecca Lohman. I physically read this like 2 or 3 years ago, and I reread it this time to prepare for Carry On. So Fangirl is I think it's considered a new adult novel about a girl going to college for the first time. She's getting separated from her twin sister. They're in the same school, but they're staying in different rooms, I think is what's happening. And she is kind of well-known but unknown for writing fan fiction based on a popular novel in this world, which is very similar to Harry Potter, called Simon Snow. And nobody really knows that it's her, but she has like thousands of fans online, and she writes them all the time, and that's kind of like her escape and what she goes to. And she's going to school for writing and all this jazz, and she's like learning about friendship and love, and it's wonderful, and I loved it even more the second time. I didn't even realize that I missed Levi, which is the main character in here, or one of the guy characters in here. I didn't even realize that I missed him. I love Rainbow Rowell's writing style so much, and she's really good at writing romance, and it's just really sweet and fun and heartwarming and just lovely. And you get little snippets of her fan fiction in here as well, which is super cool. The other narrator, I think I'll list him right here as well, does the Simon Snow like fan fiction parts, and he's like very British and awesome, and that was really fun to listen to as well. So I gave this 5 stars upon rereading it. I absolutely loved it. So then I read Carry On by Rowell, and this is narrated by Ewan Morton. So I will link my vlog, because I actually vlogged my reading experience and also my fall decorating up here in the cards. You guys can click that little eye to check it out. So this is the fan fiction that Kath was writing about Simon Snow, which is basically Harry Potter written into a real book. Lots of thoughts and feelings about this. I did not love it as much as I expected. It's still like a 3.5 star. I love Rainbow Rowell's writing style, but she is definitely better as a contemporary writer in my opinion. I just felt like the fantasy aspects didn't really hold up, and she leaned a little too heavily on the Harry Potter stuff for me. I understand like the premise of it and why it's not the same and all that jazz, but it was just a little bit too heavy for me to like fully be okay with it. But I liked it enough that I will continue on with the trilogy. I think that's going to be a trilogy now. I wasn't obsessed with it like I expected I was going to be, but I did have a great time. It was still a fun read, so 3.5 stars. Next up, I listened to Ash Princess by Laura Sebastion. This one is narrated by Sasha. I can't remember how to pronounce her last name, but it'll be right there. So I read this one for the book club that I joined last month. It was like a paranormal fun book club. Our theme for that month was like fire and ash and all that stuff, and I actually nominated this book and it got picked. So this is the first book in a trilogy about a girl whose kingdom has been taken over and she's held captive and kind of lived as like kind of like a slave, but also like treated like a lady at the same time. And she's been in captivity and kind of abused and watched her people get abused while someone else is on the throne, and she's kind of like coming out of that. So much more than that though. It's not just like your typical royalty. I think all of us really love this except for one of the girls in the book club, and I think she was just coming off of a God's grave high and it wasn't quite fast-paced enough for her. But if you like romance, this is good. This is really, really good. And I loved the world building and just different parts of it. There's magical elements. They have a lot of like jewel magic, which is very cool. I just thought this was really well done. I thought the main character was awesome to follow. She was like the perfect like leading lady in my opinion. She was like strong but vulnerable but ladylike but intense, and oh, so good. Romance and the side romance in here are my heart. I haven't continued on with the series yet just because I've been so backed up on things, but I do plan to before the end of the year because I absolutely loved it. So this was a 4-star read for me. So the next book I listened to was Magonia by Dahvana Headley. This was narrated by Therese Plummer and another guy. Again, put him down here. So I finally got to this, a duology that's been on my shelf for so long, and I just keep looking at it like, am I gonna like you? I don't know. So this is about a girl who is sick and has trouble breathing and like lots of like issues and health issues and things. But above the clouds in a sky lives the land of Magonia, and she just might have an attachment to this magical, mythical world. And it was freaking fantastic. I loved it so much. It had cloud ships and myth and lore, and Magonia actually has some real lore to it, so check that out because that was pretty cool. I didn't know anything about that. And she has an awesome best friend in here and really cool family. Reese did such a good job narrating. I loved this so much more than I was expecting. It was magical, it was fun, it was incredibly adventurous. I wish I would have saved this for Scallywagathon because they're on a ship in the sky. But 5 stars for me, and I am in the middle of Aerie right now, which is book 2. Then I started Scallywagathon, which I don't think my vlog is out just yet, so just hang on for that. It's a piratey themed readathon, so I read all piratey and ship and oceany themed books, and I started off with The Last Voyage of Blythe by Condie. I kind of had the feeling that I wasn't going to love this, and I don't know why. I think it had mixed reviews, and also I started it last year and like never carried on. This is narrated by Sophie Amos, who did a good job but also was like a little bit on the boring side. But then again, Condie can have like slower reads. So Condie is the author of Atlantia, which is one of my favorite reads. It's like an underwater city standalone siren-y book, and then also the Match trilogy, which I loved the first book. Wasn't that big of a fan of the trilogy as a whole, but I really liked the first book. So I listened to this on audio, and it was incredibly slow and very sad. Our lead character, Poe, is the captain of a pirate ship, and she's kind of out to get revenge for something that happened in her past, but she's dealing with a lot of grief and loss from something that happened in the past, and it's very sad, and you're following mostly her thoughts. So there wasn't a ton of world building or even character development besides Poe, in my opinion. I think that was what my problem was with it. I couldn't quite put a pin on what was wrong with the book because the writing was good and I cared about Poe, but it was just basically had like a somber output and not quite enough relationship building and things like that. So I wound up giving this one just 3 or 3.5 stars, unfortunately, and I probably won't hold on to it. So the second book I read for Scallywagathon was a total random pick. I just typed in pirates on Hoopla, which is a library audiobook and ebook app that I have, and it came up with this Sea of Darkness, and this one is by Isadora Brown and Rebecca Hamilton, and this one is a pirate vampire book. And I was like, okay, it was only like 7 hours. Something like fun and quick and probably cheesy and ridiculous, but I was in the mood for that. This one's narrated by Angela Daw, and guys, this was incredible. What a great find. It was so much better than I was expecting and not nearly as cheesy. It definitely was cheesy, but like in a really great way, and the romance was great, and the adventure was great, and the mystery was great. So this is part of a quartet, and I can only get the next book on audio, but hopefully I can find the rest eventually. So it's so good. Our lead character has grown up like hunting and slaying, what are they called? Sea shadows, which is basically vampires. And she's trained to do this, and they send her on this mission to to like kill a newborn sea shadow, which are like the toughest and the strongest, and she's not really sure why they sent her on such a hard mission for her first one, and she winds up doing a good job. So all of these like political intrigue things kind of twist and come into play, and then there's like a sexy vampire captain, and she has been taught like her whole life that vampires are just purely evil monsters and they don't really have like a brain or like feelings, but then she also knows that people like mate with them and she doesn't understand that. It was great. I loved it. I wound up giving it 4 stars and I can't wait to start the next one like ASAP. Then I read The Girl from Everywhere by Heidi Heilig. This is narrated by Kim, my guest. Hopefully I'm saying that right. So this is about a girl on a piratey type ship that time travels, and they like time travel to different times and they steal things and they have magical maps, and it's a whole adventure story. So I thought it was perfect for Scallywagathon. I thought this was a little bit slow and not quite as good as what I was wanting, especially after reading Sea of Darkness and the next book I'm about to talk about. I was a little bit disappointed with it. I still liked it enough to probably read the next book in the series, but I'm kind of on the fence about keeping it as a whole. I'll have to read the next one to see. It had some nice romance in it and definitely some like adventures, and like it had a well-built world. I just found it a little bit on the dull side. I'm not sure why. I don't know. I might have just been not in the mood from reading all the books for the readathon, so I wound up giving this one 3.5 stars. Then I read The Beholder by Anna Bright, narrated by Emily Rankin. So this is about a kingdom and a particular young princess who thinks that she is getting betrothed to someone that she's kind of always known her entire life, and things wind up not going as planned, and she winds up getting sent off by her stepmother to travel around and meet, I think, 4 different suitors to see if they will be a match and she will get married. But there's all this like political backstory and things that are happening that aren't what they seem, and she's never really like traveled and seen different places, and she's kind of heartbroken about what didn't happen. And it was so good. This is a newer release that came out last year. I can't believe more people aren't talking about this. This was so incredibly fun. It had selection vibes to it. It had Bachelor vibes to it. It was definitely like slightly cheesy, but really fun and very, very, very romancy. It was absolutely incredible. It had like a little bit of magical lore in it, and you kind of got attached to all of the characters really quickly, and there's all these things that you don't know and all these twists and turns. I thought it was absolutely fantastic, and I wound up giving it 4.5 stars. And lastly, on the very last day of August, I finished Isle of the Lost by Melissa de la Cruz. This is a Descendants novel. This is book 1 of the Descendants. I think it's a quartet right now. So this is a middle grade series based on, I think, the Descendants movies, but I think this one is the prequel to the first movie, if that makes sense. Which the Descendants are the Disney villains' kids, and basically in this world all of the Disney villains have been sent to the Isle of the Lost, and so they have to live there and raise their kids there, and they train their kids to be villains and hopefully like take back their like rightful place in the real kingdom and all that stuff. But you're also getting parts from the real kingdom with like the regular characters and stuff too. If you love Disney, you need to pick this up. It was very fun. It wasn't quite as great as I was wanting, but again, it was super incredibly fun. It was very, very, very heavily Disney, but this one was put on by Disney, so it followed everything like really well. You're meeting some new characters with the Disney villains. There was a great adventure at the end. This is the best Disney themed book that I've read so far. I tried one other set earlier in the year and didn't love it, and then I tried the Kingdom Keepers and didn't love it. But this one I wound up giving like a 3.5 star. It went super fast on audio. Very fun and adventurous if you don't mind middle grade and you love Disney. Highly recommend picking this up. So those are all of the books I read for August. I think it was like 8 or 9, something like that. I had a great time. Loved some of them to pieces. Didn't like others. It was a mixed bag, but I got a lot of things off my TBR that have been there for a very long time. So thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know what you guys have listened to an audiobook recently that you loved, and I'll just see you next time on the bright side. Bye!